On June 14th, a grand military parade was held in Washington, D.C. to celebrate Donald Trump's 79th birthday. In response, a No Kings movement erupted in 2,000 locations across the U.S. 5 million people took to the streets in a counter-celebration. Some carried massive paintings of Trump as a new king, or neo-Nazi, complete with a crown, a scepter, and the Constitution crushed beneath his boot. But did you know, the portrait hanging on Trump's office wall has long held the secret of a king? Hello everyone, I'm Judy and welcome to Hot Search Time Machine, where we always trace today's headlines back to the echoes of history. Who's Jackson? Yep, the dude on the $20 bill. America's founding fathers are often said to be chosen by God. Then there's this guy Jackson. His life story reads less like history and more like a Marvel origin story. His nickname was Old Hickory, and it wasn't just because he was tall and looked like a stick. The man was tough, like insanely tough. He lost his dad before he was even born. At 13, he grabbed a gun and joined a real-life FPS, against the British Empire no less. Got captured. His brother died of smallpox in the prison camp. But Jackson? Maybe it was plot armor, or maybe the virus just noped out because he walks out unscathed. Shortly after, his mom dies too. Okay, so full orphan package. Life difficulty, nightmare. All debuffs active. As an adult, someone dares to talk trash about his wife. Jackson's response? A duel. For real. He lets the other guy shoot first. Bang. Takes a bullet straight to the chest. For anyone else, it's game over. For Jackson, the bullet missed his heart by an inch. Bleeding and unfazed, raised his pistol, aimed, bang. Dead center. Opponent down. He kept that bullet in his chest for life. Still not done. As president, an assassin once pulled 2 pistols on him at point-blank range, both jammed, because it was humid. Seriously.
For a badass who makes the Grim Reaper himself punch out early, none of the following will come as a surprise. I hate the bank. I'll destroy it. I don't like the elites. I'll crush them. The Supreme Court rules against me. I'll ignore it. His enemies called him King Andrew I, and ironically, he loved it. But at the same time, he was also America's first truly popularly elected president. He championed the common white man, removed property requirements for voting, and shattered the grip of the aristocracy and elites on politics. He created Jacksonian democracy, while also vastly expanding presidential power. Starting to sound familiar? That's because Donald Trump is like Jackson 2.0 with memes, 200 years apart but spiritually aligned. So, how many boxes do these two kings check together? Stay tuned, we're just getting started. The greatest commonality is populism. Jackson had a famous nickname, King Mob. This was because on his inauguration day, his supporters, a mass of farmers, artisans, and frontiersmen, stormed the White House for a party, leaving muddy footprints on velvet carpets and nearly tearing the place apart. The elites of the time were terrified, exclaiming, "The barbarians have seized Rome." Does this scene remind you of 2016, when that loud-mouthed real estate tycoon won the presidency, to the astonishment of the elite media? Both men accurately captured the hearts of the silent majority, a group forgotten by the elites. Jackson's darkest legacy was the forced implementation of the Indian Removal Act, which led to the Trail of Tears and the deaths of tens of thousands. This stemmed from his core political philosophy, that the people can arrive at the correct conclusions. So beyond his personal prejudice against Native Americans, the Trail of Tears also satisfied the desperate desire for land among poor whites, a manifestation of the will of the majority of that era. Similarly, Trump's anti-illegal immigration policies have catered to American anxieties about border security and jobs. This also led to the Los Angeles riots a few days ago, sparked by mass deportations of illegal immigrants by ICE. So you see, history is often strikingly similar. When public opinion surges and clashes with conflicts of interest, moral arguments can seem powerless. This is precisely why Jackson's historical reputation is so sensitive. Many universities have removed his statues, and his portrait on the $20 bill is often proposed for replacement under Democratic administrations. These actions may also privately enrage some traditional Americans who see it as an attempt to alter the nation's memory. Of course, historians like Francis Paul Prucha offer a different perspective. He
He argues that given the intense hostility between whites and Native Americans at the time, if Jackson had not relocated the southeastern tribes, they might have faced a crueler fate, complete slaughter and annihilation, like countless other tribes lost to history. Sheltered generations often assume America's vast lands were simply handed to them for free. As society and morals evolve, yesterday's hero can become today's villain. But the deep-seated desires and fears of human nature always put on new costumes to return to the stage of history. History cannot be rewound. We can only correct the present and the future. Second, the AntiElite Big Mouth persona. Before Jackson, U.S. presidents all came from the East Coast, Virginia, New York, Massachusetts. Most were of English descent, carrying themselves with an air of elite gentility. But Jackson was Scots-Irish, a poor boy from the frontier, and a soldier. The Scots-Irish temperament is famously fierce, rough, hot-blooded, even a bit violent. Think Braveheart and you'll get the picture. Jackson loved to curse. In his eyes, Congress and the Supreme Court were dens of corruption. He once brazenly challenged the court, saying, "The Supreme Court has made its decision, now let them enforce it." This is basically trampling all over the separation of powers. And Trump? We all know the story. He constantly flip-flops and contradicts himself, staging a never-ending, shameless one-man show. Of course, there's a key difference. Jackson's rise was forged in battle. His victory at the Battle of New Orleans in 1812 made him a national hero, and despite his humble origins, he was smart and hardworking, a self-made man who became a successful lawyer, judge, and large landowner through land speculation. Trump, on the other hand, got a small loan from his father and conveniently dodged the Vietnam War draft. Third, the war on the, quote, deep state, end quote. For Jackson, the federal government was a cesspool of corruption, and the people had sent him to clean house. And clean house he did. He launched investigations that uncovered massive fraud, recovered $280,000 in stolen funds, saved the Navy over $1 million, and cracked down on pension scams. A whole slate of officials got the boot. His arch nemesis, the Second Bank of the United States. In his eyes, it was a financial monster controlled by elites, a hydra sucking the life out of the common man and the root of all corruption. So he took his presidential veto and killed the bank for good. In today's terms, that's like a president announcing he's dissolving the Federal Reserve. Sound familiar? It's the 19th century version of Drain the Swamp. But here's the twist. Jackson actually did it, and he slashed spending. Trump's swamp draining, however, was a bit more conceptual. In fact, government spending went up under his watch. And here's the irony. Jackson's system of rotation in office later became a breeding ground for the spoils system. Basically, to the victor belong the spoils. He replaced the old guard with his own cronies. His bank war remains his most controversial legacy. By winning it, Jackson achieved something legendary. He paid off the entire national debt, a first and last in U.S. history. But soon after he left office, the Panic of 1837 hit. Businesses collapsed. Many historians argue his war on the bank directly triggered a 4-year economic winter. But let's be real. Where there's power, there's a swamp. For 250 years, America's self-proclaimed beacon of democracy has wrestled with its own deep state of tangled interests. It just stumbles along, sometimes fixing itself, sometimes just giving the corruption a new paint job. Fourth, the vengeful, devoted rogue. Furthermore, his hatred for the second bank wasn't entirely principled. It's said to stem from a personal experience where a bank loan nearly bankrupted him, leading some to call it a personal vendetta. And yes, like Trump, Jackson was also deeply vengeful. But Jackson's temper was the real deal, and unlike Trump, he didn't just stop at trash talk. Legend has it he fought in 103 duels, though this is hard to verify. His most famous duel to the death was against Charles Dickinson, who had insulted his wife, Rachel. His love for Rachel is called one of the most passionate love stories in American political history. After his election, the media viciously sensationalized Rachel's bigamy scandal. Unable to bear the humiliation, she suffered a fatal heart attack. A devastated Jackson clung to her cold body, refusing to let go, and nearly missed his own inauguration. "I will enter the White House with a broken heart," he said. The two met at Rachel's family home, where Jackson was a young prosecutor boarding with them. She, the daughter of a prominent Tennessee pioneer family, was in an unhappy marriage. She boldly eloped with Jackson, a shocking move for the time. Elegant, artistic, and hardworking, she was something of a mix between Scarlett and Melanie from Gone with the Wind. But she never liked the spotlight and detested politics, repeatedly advising her husband, "Don't let power change you." While Jackson was away at war or in Washington, she single-handedly managed their plantation, the Hermitage. The couple had no biological children, but adopted several, including a Native American infant orphaned during the Creek War, and ensured they all received a good education. Trump, of course, isn't nearly as much of a fighter in the physical sense. He moved his battles online. From political rivals to his own cabinet members, from Hollywood stars to ordinary reporters, whoever crossed him, he'd duel them endlessly, with insulting nicknames and tweets. But Jackson didn't have a heart of stone. When he entered the White House, his supporters swarmed in, vying for jobs to replace those who hadn't voted for him. Yet, an old veteran working as a postman who hadn't voted for Jackson was allowed to keep his job. When Jackson learned the man still carried a British bullet in his body, he said, "He carries that for his country. To me, that is the strongest endorsement of all." King of controversy. Jackson was plagued by labels: bigamist, slave owner, war butcher, land speculator, yet the media's constant attacks couldn't stop his rise. He, like Trump, built his brand as an anti-elite populist, but his achievement was arguably more remarkable. Facing an elite-controlled press and with no social media to amplify his voice, his message had to be carried by his followers alone, spreading from town to town by word of mouth, a far greater hurdle to overcome. In 1824, Jackson won the popular vote, but no candidate secured an electoral majority. The House of Representatives chose John Quincy Adams, enraging Jackson's supporters, who decried a corrupt bargain. Fast forward to 2020. After Trump's loss, his supporters stopped the Steal movement, culminated in the January 6th Capitol attack. The kitchen cabinet. Distrusting his official cabinet, Jackson preferred to consult with a group of close friends and journalists in the White House kitchen. They were dubbed the Kitchen Cabinet, an early example of informal advisors influencing the presidency. Master of executive power. Jackson's use of the presidential veto was unprecedented, drawing accusations of authoritarianism. Trump similarly favored executive orders to bypass Congress. Nation first. Jackson took a hard line with France, even at the risk of war, and signed tariffs to protect American industries. Does Trump's America First policy and his trade wars sound familiar? First target of assassination. Jackson was the first president to face an assassination attempt, and he fought the attacker off with his cane. Trump also survived an attempt on his life, and the subsequent photo of him, fist raised in defiance, became a potent symbol for his campaign. However, the two have stark differences. Jackson rarely boasted of his achievements, whereas the Trump White House's obsession with winning became a spectacle. Furthermore, Jackson was not wealthy after his presidency. He was deep in debt due to his son's mismanagement of his estate. Unlike the Trump family, who have made a fortune from ventures like digital collectibles. In American culture, the word king carries a double meaning. Politically, no kings is a founding principle. From the rebellion against King George III to the satire of monarchy in the musical Hamilton, anti-royalism runs deep in the American psyche. But in pop culture, king means power and greatness. Elvis is the king of rock and roll, Michael Jackson is the king of pop, and even Burger King rules fast food. Americans fear political kings, but love cultural ones. This contradiction reveals a deeper truth. Americans reject monarchs, yet admire strongmen. So when critics call Trump or Jackson a king, their fans might just hear, "Damn right, he's our boss." And here's the ultimate irony. Andrew Jackson, the president Donald Trump calls his political hero, was actually the founder of the Democratic Party. The Whig Party, created to oppose Jackson, took its name from Britain's anti-monarchist movement and eventually evolved into today's Republican Party. Jackson didn't just end the early era of one-party harmony. He laid the foundation for America's two-party rivalry. History has a sense of humor. The father of the Democrats became the spirit animal of Republican populism. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow the channel. And if you've got a different take, the comment section is all yours.